Monica, and the mayor and his family will be entering as well.
Good morning, Mayor Harrell. Good morning. It is my distinct honor to administer the oath of office. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Bruce Harrell.
I, Bruce Harrell.
Swear or affirm.
Swear or affirm.
That I possess all of the qualifications.
That I possess all of the qualifications.
Prescribed in the Seattle City Charter.
Prescribed in the Seattle City Charter.
And the Seattle Municipal Code.
And the Seattle Municipal Code.
For the position of mayor.
For the position of mayor.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the State of Washington.
The Constitution of the State of Washington.
And the Charter and ordinances.
And the Charter and ordinances.
Of the City of Seattle.
Of the City of Seattle.
And that I will faithfully conduct myself.
And that I will faithfully conduct myself.
As mayor for the City of Seattle.
As mayor for the City of Seattle. Thank you very much. All right. Jane? Good morning, Seattle, and Happy New Year.
Good morning.
Good morning. Call and response. So I'd like to acknowledge and begin by acknowledging members of my executive team who have answered the call of public service, lending their talent and their education and their lived experiences to help serve the residents of Seattle during one of its most challenging times. Now, as many of you know, because of COVID and in particular the Omicron variant, we decided not to have a large gathering as was originally intended. We had written out, our plan is for me to actually sing the national anthem a cappella. I was going to close with a rap. That was the plan, but after careful consideration, we decided that a more intimate environment would be more appropriate. That way it wouldn't embarrass itself quite as much. So we know what's happened in the past. In the past, that we've heard tremendous speeches, surrounded by family and loved ones, and packed with city employees and hardworking community leaders and friends and folks from all walks of life. And we heard the energy and the promise that a new administration brings. But 2022 is not like past years. We continue to grapple with the stubborn pandemic that limits our ability to gather and celebrate. From March 11, 2020, when the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic, we have lived in fear. Fear to be around others, fear to shake someone's hand, fear that our streets are unsafe, fear that Seattle has been heading in the wrong direction, can't fix our problems, fear that our days in front of us hold less promise than those behind us. So today I address my remarks not to an assembled crowd, but directly to you, the people of Seattle, and to my family. Starting today, we will lead this city with an obsession with excellence and kindness, inclusion and hope. We will balance optimism, and we will reject these attitudes of fear. Starting with our Harrell administration, we will rise together as a city. We'll start this journey together. Today I'll discuss some ideas that how we will reinvigorate our public spaces and elevate our small businesses, how we will restore our culture and our arts and our nightlife. We will be intolerant, not of the people who are unhoused, but the conditions that cause them to be unhoused. We will come through this pandemic and take its lessons to help us improve healthcare, to improve our education outcomes, to address the disparities on a whole new level. Today begins our journey to bring new energy and new resources to address homelessness and public safety and gun violence and climate change. We will do this not by denigrating or shouting down those before us or around us. So listen, because there are so many who have given their lives or are giving their lives to do this work. So as your mayor, I will lead by example. I don't make excuses. We will implement, very simply, ideas that work. We'll be bold enough to innovate and take risks, and humble enough to embrace ideas put forth by others. I love Seattle. I love the people in it. I love the water and the air we breathe. I love the salmon we're trying to protect and the children we're trying to safeguard. I'm all in, ready to go to work. In fact, the entire Seattle team is ready. We are energized and we are focused and we are not afraid. You know, I've spoken to all 10,000 plus city employees here to serve. Well, okay, I didn't really speak to them. I sent them an email. But in my first message, I tried to impress upon them that they are all ambassadors of our city. So grateful for their selfless work. I want them to know that they are a critical part of our success of Seattle's future. We all have a role to play. So I want to thank members of the City Council and members of our transition team who are joining virtually. I've had conversations with so many members of the council and the community. We are all excited to work together. Our transition committee, by the way, has done incredible work providing insight and ideas for us to implement on our administration. Here on the 7th floor, your Seattle executive team is the most diverse in our city's history, with unique lived experiences and professional experience. Our 3 deputy mayors are women of color, complemented by the city's first chief equity officer, herself an immigrant and woman of color. So be proud of that, Seattle. I hope that you come to know their stories of how they overcame race discrimination and gender discrimination and LGBTQ bigotry, and yet rose to the top level of leadership and educational attainment. These are your stories. These are our stories, and that goes with every member of the team standing with me today. Every single one of them overcame impediments to be the leaders that they are. So I'm very proud of these 9 individuals and the full roster of cabinet members we've hired or elevated. In fact, we have a few more we will announce next week we'll also be proud of. So under our administration, Seattle will be thriving. Let me repeat that, media. Seattle will be thriving. No more talk of this dying narrative. We will be a city renewed with optimism, a city that treats all people with dignity and appreciates the richness and diversity of our voices, the perspectives of all communities. Now, when I meet with businesses, small businesses, neighbors, and I listen to folks from Lake City to Columbia City, I see a Seattle that embraces not only our shared values, but a city of many religions and cultures and origin stories. But when we talk about being progressive or liberal or inclusive, I've yet to see the Seattle that I know it can be. That's just the truth. It's such an honor to continue this collective journey of defining who we are and what we can become. So you elected a little biracial Central area boy that attended your local public schools. For those who believe that every kid deserves an opportunity to lead the city that they love, I'm an example of that. But everyone will have an opportunity to help us. So for those who are still cynical or oppositional, I welcome the opportunity to have a dialogue with you, and I simply ask that very simple request. Give us a chance. Give us a chance. So if there's one thing I believe in without pause, if there's one thing I want to leave as my legacy as the mayor of Seattle, is that we are one Seattle. So, one Seattle, we invite dialogue and learning, collaboration, thoughtful exchange. We unite our city around a one Seattle vision, and when we confront inequities in race and economic opportunity and environmental justice and housing and housing affordability and equity, we build a One Seattle, one that they're not afraid to openly confront past evils like the Chinese Exclusion Act or Japanese incarceration, historic wrongs like redlining and black marginalization, and the current crises like homelessness and public safety, and the need for police reform. You see, in One Seattle, we honestly believe we are fighting for the same people in the city. Working people, underrepresented people, people who want a living wage, people who just simply want better opportunities, people who want to be free from violence, people who want to save our planet. That's a One Seattle. So the people who are with me today and the people who are part of the Harrell cabinet, they would not take their jobs otherwise. We make real progress when we move toward healing and reparation and restoration, and we reject slogans and mean tweets, and we really commit to listening to one another, and having a real dialogue. So here are a few elements of a Seattle One vision I'd like to share with you. In One Seattle, I'll lead with this: we will have health care for all. Working closely with our Chief Equity Officer, Adia Memory, and our Director of Strategic Initiatives, Tim Burgess, we've already begun discussions with healthcare facilities and interested civic leaders and community clinics. We'll make sure every resident in our city not only has health care, but that they are healthy. You see, our Healthy Seattle is a goal of ensuring that we have the healthiest population in the nation. This is achievable. We've already begun these discussions with experts who not only know how to measure it, but how to build it. So we're exploring these new partnerships with healthcare leaders and community clinics and advocates in health equity, and we'll bring this vision to a reality. No one in this city should be without health coverage and healthy care. So in One Seattle, we all feel safe and supported. So that's why I will be working with safety leaders and justice leaders and law enforcement professionals committed to culture change and gun violence prevention, leaders who can reshape and redefine police. See, a safe city employs the right kind of police officer and the right number of police officers. And we establish at the same time an unarmed, community-based responder who we desperately need to restore trust and to curb the street-level activity, much of which is so undesirable. And we do this by listening to communities and neighborhoods. When they say they want to feel safe, we also know they mean safe without racial bias. So I'm asking each police officer to come out with me to help build trust with all Seattle residents, providing a beacon of hope. You know, if we do this right here in Seattle, the whole nation will watch us. I believe that. So much of this work will build on the decade-long leadership of Senior Deputy Mayor Monisha Harrell, a statewide champion recognized for her work in effective policing and de-escalation and criminal legal reforms, and helps restore lives and communities. This work she's been doing and making sure we have an effective police department. You see, in One Seattle, we don't allow people to live and suffer on our streets, our sidewalks. That's why I created a dedicated deputy mayor in Tiffany, Washington, to discuss solely and focused on our homelessness response. With that kind of labor focus, we're going to step up our regional coordination and enhance our growing state partnerships. We will be showing visible progress here, and we know that that's exactly what you want to see under the Harrell administration. So we will be publishing a plan during our first quarter, and I look forward to working with the City Council and the community leaders and all of the stakeholders in this regard. I've already had discussions with King County Executive Dow Constantine and Governor Jay Inslee, and I'm proud to call them my friends and colleagues in this work. So I will be issuing an executive order requiring a transparent plan and directing our utilities as an example to proactively provide us with information on utility shutoffs, which is actually an actual indicator when someone is suffering homelessness, vulnerability, or they have human service needs. So in One Seattle, we'll have affordable housing for all. We support our seniors and those on fixed income and working families and vulnerable people. That's why I'll be issuing an executive order demanding a full review of the approval processes, policies, and implementation to expedite construction of affordable housing. We'll fill in the gaps where zoning is already available for housing and construction density, and our Chief Operating Officer, Marco Lowe, who's not only has deep experience at City Hall, but actual experience in the housing industry, he will lead this critical effort with us. So as we embark upon a citywide master plan update that many of you are quite aware about, that the work we're doing, we'll look for opportunities to address every neighborhood, to address their shortage of quality housing at every income level. So in One Seattle, we will have parks in our open spaces, a new discussion about that as we combat climate change. We will be hiring a new parks director committed not only to restoring our world-class park system, but investing in underserved neighborhoods and expanding access and equity. So we will enhance our green spaces and improve tree canopy in urban neighborhoods most at risk right now of warmer temperatures. And we'll improve not only our sports and our play field. I was known to shoot a brick in the basketball courts as a kid in our sports centers. Made a few, missed more than I made. But we'll look at those facilities and look at them a little differently, because we want to expand them to create a new dialogue in education and safety. So our Office of Sustainability and the Environment will be a national leader in coordinating a citywide climate policy plan and help us reaffirm our commitment to net zero emissions. So in One Seattle, every child from every neighborhood will be able to play in these kinds of facilities and receive the education future that they deserve. So that's why I've committed upon a new mentorship plan that we will build out in educational programs, many of which I champion on the City Council, especially for Black and brown youth, too often lacking in the service and support we want to see. So we'll look for new ways to expand affordable child care and to fully recognize that the brain development from 0 to 5, how critical that is for healthy child development. I think about this every single day. I see that my grandkids here, every single day of their nurturing, and I want every family to have that kind of facility and that kind of option in front of them for their children. So I'm excited to have new opportunities of partnership with our superintendent, our public school system. I've begun having a dialogue with our superintendent of public schools, Dr. Brent Jones, to look at more pathways and more emotional and behavioral support that, again, are so needed in these challenging times. So we'll explore a new use of our community centers and playfields, and we'll give not just places to build camaraderie, but how they will be assets for education and safety. Let's have a vision 0 for child and youth mortality in Seattle, particularly as a result of violence. I'm very excited about the discussion we're having and how under Deputy Mayor Kendi Yamaguchi, you'll see this new work in communities and our parks and community centers and our first responders, and we'll make sure that we optimize the use of our city assets. We're not into sub-optimizing the assets that we have. So, you know, as a kid, I used to walk to school, and there was this bully that wanted my coat. Nice coat. One thing about that bully, though, the bully couldn't outrun me. So I knew my path to school, but he couldn't outrun me. So I kept my coat. And I think about that, but see, today, you know, they didn't have iPhones and smartphones when I was young. But today, the stakes have changed. The kids are being threatened and beat up badly and sometimes killed for their possessions. The stakes have changed. We must be all in for protecting our kids. So that's why you will see the field has changed that the Harrell administration will approve. Now, these goals I've described today are not mere aspirations. They are our mission as an administration. Much of this policy work we'll do will be led by our Director of Policy, Dan Eder. So under our administration, we're not going to play small ball. This is not the time for small ball. This is the time to be creative and bold. So we know we are a city that has grown up and thrived at the edges of innovation. It's a frontier port, a gateway to the Pacific trade, and pioneer in aerospace and technology, home to global brands, a vibrant small business, a leader in arts and music and culture. We know that. But let me share something with you. There are 88 cities in this country named Washington. Yeah, you can look it up. There are 41 Springfields in this country. There are 35 cities named Franklin. There's quite literally only one Seattle. A Seattle built on the historic lands of the Duwamish. The Duwamish people, named for its leader and connected to the air, the land, in ways we must cherish and acknowledge. Seattle is unique and truly a great city, but I need to make this clear. One Seattle does not mean Seattle is number one. You see, our place and our pride and greatness is not contingent upon the subordinate position of other cities or other places. It's measured by the examples we set, how we lift ourselves and lift others. In One Seattle, we put in the work, but we lead with humility and urgency and compassion. These are the virtues of a One Seattle. And so as I close and I'm physically looking at the press, I'm busy looking at the press. I want to recognize that you have a place in this too. The Journalist Creed, written by Walter Williams in 1914, describes that you only write that which you believe to be true in your heart. That you be tolerant. That you never become careless. That you remain self-controlled. That you're patient and respectful. Now, those are important words for all of us. So in One Seattle, we will replace this fear I opened with love. We're stronger when we work together. And I'll close with that and say, thank you, Seattle, for giving this little boy from the Central District this chance to lead the city. Thank you for all of this opportunity, and we're ready to get started. And with that, we will field a few questions. I'm going to ask that Jamie Howison stand with the crew here. He's I'm told never to say jokes about my close friend Jamie Howison, but sometimes it's just irresistible. You love someone like this, the jokes just naturally come out, so I apologize for that. Thank you very, very much, and thank you for joining us virtually, community. Questions, please. No questions, have a great day, everybody.
So we'll take the first question that was submitted online by Amari Salisbury with the Conversion Committee here. Mayor Harrell, you were able to rally support from Seattle's Black community, many of whom voted for more liberal candidates in other races, but specifically voted for you because of the perception that you would best serve the interests of the Black community. What are your specific plans to address issues such as economic opportunity, access to education, and home ownership to offset gentrification and displacement in the Black community?
Yes, thank you, Omar, for that question. And I think Omar actually knows the answer, but has given me an opportunity to display the answers that I was elected on, actually, during the campaign. Thank you, Omar. So precisely why we decided to create a cabinet-level position in Chief Equity Officer Audio Memory, because we want to operationalize equity. And by that I mean, we've done a great job of teaching about our race and social justice initiatives, but now we want to make sure that we put structure around working with small BIPOC businesses as an example. That when we talk about creating a new department, we're talking about recruiting from our communities, many of whom are culturally competent and ready to protect their own communities. So you're going to see new outreach strategies, and most importantly, you're going to see measurement. How well are we working with BIPOC businesses and giving them business opportunities? How well are we introducing small businesses to large businesses? How well are we measuring their economic prosperity? And that is coupled with the education policies that we're going to implement. I personally believe that education is one of the biggest equity drivers in this city. So I want to make sure in education, not just formal education, but often informal education. We have jobs out there in the port and maritime industry, many of which pay six-figure income. So how can I make sure that our opportunities, particularly the African-American community, have access to these opportunities? How well do they get access to grants for their education? So we recognize that when we look at the 400 years of race discrimination in this country that have been perpetuated by the original sin of slavery, that we see actual remnants of this in day-to-day lives. Some are naked to the eye. Some we don't see. Some are institutional in nature. So under our work with Chief Equity Officer Audio Memory, we're going to expose these, have an open dialogue, and measure the progress we do. So you're going to see tangible results, new kinds of relationships, working with groups like the ethnic media and some of the storytellers and what we call the griot tradition, we're going to bring these stories to life, because I believe every opportunity we have to unify this city. Every opportunity we have to learn from one another. Not just for the African American community, but for any culture out there. Every opportunity we have from learning from one another gives us the opportunity to love one another, to have a dialogue with one another. So, Omari, I look forward to working with you, my brother, and I've got to tell you, you're going to be working closely with me on some of this stuff, so keep your powder dry and stop asking me these tough questions.
Any questions in the room? Matt?
Mr. Mayor, Police Chief, can you give me a status on what you plan to do with that key position?
Yes, and I got to tell you, that's the first time someone called me Mr. Mayor, Matt. Thank you for that. It feels sort of good. I think I can wear this job for a while. So here's the situation with Chief Diaz, someone that I've known for decades, someone that I respect. That I believe that I have to give everyone an opportunity to show some brilliance, show some talent. So we're having discussions right now. He does not know what it looks like to work for a mayor like me. I have to give him that opportunity. So we're having discussions. He knows that some people have called for a national search, but I start right here, and I have to give him real measurement criteria by which I can see what he's doing. So I can't give you a specific deadline on he's an interim, when we may lift the interim or do a national search. It's my second day in office, by the way. So we're having those discussions. I want Chief Diaz to know that you will hear me in a lot of situations where that I'm going to try to bring out the best in everyone. So I can't give you a specific deadline, but we'll be making some decisions here in the first quarter. I guess that would be a deadline for you, so you'll see some decisions there. Okay, Chris had a question?
Chris?
Yeah, I was hoping you could elaborate on what you talked about off the top with this healthcare idea and healthcare for all. What exactly does that mean, and what does that look like?
Sure, thanks, Chris. So this is a game changer that many of you, probably most people in here have health care, but you probably don't know who does not. That's where we start off with, what problem we're trying to solve. And not only just the ability to get treated, but the ability to have some preventative care. And some of this could even be mental health care. We all know that housing and housing security or insecurity is a component of one's health. So what it's going to look like is community leaders coming together, publishing a plan on who is unhealthy or who does not have health care. And then you're going to see, using a consortium of clinics and our hospital structure and the philanthropic community, a system by which we can start measuring again. Measuring our health is critical, and there are ways to do that. Again, we've had some discussion on what that looks like, and so you're going to see a plan here, hopefully within a few months. The skeleton, we actually have, I hate to put anyone on the spot, but I'm not afraid to. You're going to see, again, Director of Strategic Initiatives, Tim Burgess, and Chief Executive Officer, Adi Memory, working together to publish something for you to see, to answer your question directly, what this will look like and where we will go. It's going to take a little time to build. And the leaders in this industry, who I will unname right now, because I didn't have permission to disclose their names, have said, these champions have said, we will be the healthiest city in this country, and we'll measure that. So more to come, and we have a team behind it working on this diligently.
So another online question from Vice. Where does Mayor Harrell see Seattle's role in leading the charge and pushing progressive policies on a local level, especially with some of the national frustration with younger people around the current federal agenda?
So, so let's talk about this term progressive for a moment. This is where some people in this room cringe when I start riffing these responses. And I know who they are. That I'm just sometimes not sure what that means, because in our candidacy, we had probably the most racially diverse, socioeconomic diverse, culturally diverse, and religious diverse volunteer-based and campaigns that this city's ever seen. So when we talk about the progressive agenda, I ran on a progressive agenda. When you start talking about health care for all, when you start talking about building a progress, an opportunity window for everyone to succeed, that is progressive policy at its fullest. When you start looking at this team behind me, and I have to tell you, it's nice having them behind me because they're usually bossing me around and I'm listening to them. They get together and give me a few orders. This is what progressive policy looks like. So to answer the question directly, as I am known to do, we will advance a progressive policy. We've already started. And these ideas that I talked about, building another kind of response unit, an unarmed response unit, that is what progressive policy is all about. When we start looking at, in Olympia, the tax structure, which we all can admit is extremely regressive. And we know that the wealth experienced by large corporations in a city where people cannot afford to live in their homes and are intense, we know that that is the opposite of having a progressive city. So my plea to those who self-proclaim to be the progressives,
Sorry, it's really cramped in here.
give us a chance and let's work together because I look forward to it. I saw a question on that.
Thank you very much. Mayor Harrell, I know that there are a number of crises that you've addressed, but I want to go back to COVID and Omicron and what you can say to city residents, in particular parents, to see all of these people waiting in line, trying to get tests. We don't have enough tests that are out there, and parents are struggling with, what do I do? Do I send my kid back? What would you say with regard to what you do about getting more tests here, and what sort of response the city is preparing for right now with regard to a COVID priority?
Sure. So, and I want to thank Deputy Mayor Manisha Harrell for the last several weeks. I don't think she's missed one briefing on making sure we're getting the real data that we're confronted with, particularly with the Omicron virus, getting the science and the data that matters most. So number one is, I'm conservative in this respect, and I have to let the data and the science govern every decision that we'll make coming out of our administration. I am very proud that, for example, our vaccination rates are in the mid-80s, one of the highest in the country, and many people now who have gotten one shot, one vaccination, the numbers would suggest that in a few weeks we'll be in the mid-90s in terms of vaccination rates. So following the governor's lead, who again I think have done an outstanding job in leading the state, and under the county's lead, under Dal Constantine, who I think has done an outstanding job, I will partner with them, and we're having these discussions. And I want to thank Mayor Durkin. I want to thank Mayor Durkin and her administration for leading the way in this work. And if I didn't make those in my opening remarks, I want to apologize for the city employees and her leadership and her administration's leadership on leading the way. So I will even have conversations with them. They've assured me they're only a call away. So you're going to see some good policy work and some good conditions. My first charter responsibility is to protect the health and welfare of the city. So our vaccination rates, our COVID testing facilities, we'll do an inventory of what we're doing and what we have to improve. We can do better. I was in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago, and when I talked to President Biden and Vice President Harris and our housing director, Marcia Fudge, and our transportation director, Buttigieg, said his name right sometime. I did mispronounce it right in front of him, which is quite embarrassing. That they know that we are trying to lead the way. And what I told them under the Build Back Better scenario is that we need resources. And so we're going to make sure we get the resources. Again, I sort of come into these discussions not with just a joke ready, which always is a good icebreaker, but letting them know that we need the investments here. We need the resources here. So I'll be going back in a few weeks having these discussions. But again, I got to protect people. And so we hope to have availability on the sites. Not to share too much information, but I believe my granddaughters were tested this morning just to make sure that do I get any credibility for having the cutest granddaughters in the city? We'll make sure we have all of the facilities available.
So it's the last online question, then we'll take one more question from the room if it's there. Hannah Krieg asked, sort of in the same line, what, in the face of Omicron, what health metrics you're looking at with regard to the eviction moratorium and hazard tag?
Yeah. So the eviction moratorium expires, I believe on the 15th, if I'm not mistaken. So, number one, our policies, whether we extend it or not, let me be clear, we'll announce that decision in due time. But let me be clear on what we're trying to achieve. First of all, we don't want anyone to be homeless because they're getting evicted and because COVID has put them in that kind of situation. So our policies will lead us to that, whether we extend it or not. I'm not in a position to say clearly a yes or no, because it's for us, for the Harrell administration, it's not a yes or no. We also realize that many of the small landlords that own one or two places, that they are at the risk of losing their place as well. Many of them have mortgages on taxes and insurance, and if we lose that rental inventory, there goes another house that perhaps can be rehabilitated and not affordable again. And so we're going to try to balance the situation and make sure that we come up with a strong policy that protects those most vulnerable from homelessness. That's why my executive order on utility shut-offs becomes critical. So we're going to make sure that the benefit we have is to look back and see how well it worked, how the moratorium worked. So we're going to look at that. In a perfect world, I would have had more than a week to do this work. But that's okay. As I said earlier, we don't make excuses. So you're going to see an announcement here in the next week as we look at the data and see how we can improve it to make sure we protect vulnerable residents and even vulnerable landlords, many of whom we heard from who are at the risk of losing the house that they, with a rental income of maybe perhaps a unit they bought and rented it out. So our policy will be announced in about a week.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, how much detail can we expect from your plan in the first quarter on addressing homelessness? And when will people begin noticing a difference, not only in clearing public spaces, but in truly getting help to those who need it?
Yes. So the level, I want to make it clear, and that's a great question. The level of detail hopefully will be such that you have a feel and a means by which you can measure what the heck we are doing. And it will morph into a more detailed plan as we develop it. So I need to make that clear. That what you have right now is not an articulable plan. You can't see the strategy that we're trying to implement. And I have to make it clear, as soon as you start talking about that, some people are hearing something differently. Oh, we're just gonna sweep everyone off the sidewalks. No, we want to show what we have right now. Where are people living, right? We have the data, we're just not making it as public as we want to. So you're gonna see a level of detail by which you feel as though you can measure how we're doing. Number one. There's a second component of the question that escaped me and I wanted to say something.
When people might begin noticing a difference?
Oh, thank you. So I'm not going to take credit for this because I didn't do this, what I'm about to say. But you did see that I think under our campaign, we tried to change the narrative here. That I constantly talk about situations at Green Lake or Broadview Thompson Elementary School, and situations that I thought were intolerable. And I think that the Durkin administration, those trying to house people, you saw some renewed energy. Again, I'm not taking credit for it, that you saw that. So I think that even quite candidly, the number of encampments you saw around City Hall, I'm passionate about getting people housing. So I think you're going to see Deputy Mayor Tiffany Washington, I say this with love and fondness and respect for my deputy mayor, as she laughs behind me, she's going to be measured by that. She knows, she shares the same passion and commitment. So we talked about real progress in a short time, so we're meeting feverishly on that, and I think that you'll see some change here in the very near future. But one thing I want to get off to on the right foot, and I'm not going to say something that's not going to get done. So I'm not going to say, by Friday of this week, everyone's going to say, voila, he did it in 3 days. But I will guarantee you that you will see people housed here very shortly. So again, that's why we already started, even before I took my oath of office, conversation with Dal Constantine and Jay Inslee on the resources we need. So you'll see real progress. And I think that the city is already starting to see the momentum that we're bringing. So I'll leave it there.
All right, that concludes the swearing-in ceremony.
Thank you very much.